Teachers, what if I told you that this summer was going to be different? You were going to get the rest and recovery and fun that you actually deserve and need because you're not going to spend your summer freaking out about what went wrong in your classroom last year and how to prevent it from happening again this year. You're not going to be doom scrolling social media. You're not going to be trying to find like the perfect classroom management system to implement or something to like invest in to fix your classroom management, because you know that next year is going to be the year in your classroom that you've always envisioned yourself having as a teacher, where you actually get to teach your kids actually do what they're supposed to be doing. Your classroom just runs itself come October. Good classroom management is built on super solid systems and routines, period. There is no like hack or like secret consequence that's going to get your classroom to just flow seamlessly. I'm your teacher big sister. I've been there, I've done that. I love all things classroom management, systems, routines, organization. We are going to be breaking down everything regarding routines, transitions, rules of thumb, common mistake. So let's get into it. Okay, so add this to the list of things that we didn't learn in college and they don't teach us in professional development. Good classroom management is not like reacting to behavior all day. It's not like getting lucky with a good group of kids. It's setting up ways that your kids do things in the classroom that are super consistent, super structured. They do it the same way every single day. It works for them, it works for you. It's having a process for how every little thing is done in your classroom. So let's talk about some general keys, some general rules of thumb when setting up like routines for your classroom. A good theme to have whenever you're setting up your routines is calmness is contagious. That's like my motto for my kids. We talk about what contagious means. We talk about how chaos is contagious. And we also talk about like years that we've had where we could just feel the chaos of our classrooms, like, infusing themselves into us, and how that made us feel and how we can help create calmness in our classroom and how calmness can be our contagious. And that's kind of like the way that I run my classroom. That's, the kids gravitate towards it. The kids absorb that. They want a classroom like that. Another general rule of thumb, whenever you are considering like setting up your routines and coming up with routines for your classroom, is the trouble spots are going to be transitions. So anytime that your kids are moving around your classroom, changing activities, changing times of day, moving in and out the classroom, pack up, and mornings. Those are the times that you need to be super, super structured and super, super intentional about to get that classroom that runs itself by October. With routines, you always want to consider student voice levels. Like what's the expectation for student voice levels during that routine? We want to use super concise and like efficient teacher language whenever we're doing these routines. That way we don't find ourselves like lecturing or having to repeat directions over and over. Another rule of thumb is setting up like a poster or a digital slide or an anchor chart of your expectations for certain parts of your routine. I love using student jobs. I have student jobs that help run my classroom. I have a job for every single one of my students. Another general rule of thumb, consistency is key. So being consistent in how the kids do the routine, the way that you enforce the routine, when you guys do the routine, consistency is going to save your life. And then in our next episode, we're going to talk about like how to teach these routines. That's also going to be key in making sure that your routines stick. Okay, so I know you guys have seen like those checklists of routines to teach your students at the beginning of the year. You definitely need one of those. I have one for free on my website. I can link it for you guys. Obviously, you're not going to teach all of that on day one. Like you're going to like prioritize which ones to teach on like the first, second, third days of school. And then the other ones will kind of just like come naturally throughout the first few weeks of school. But we're gonna hit some of those like big major power player routines today. Okay, so let's move through these routines in order of like importance. One of the biggest ones that you're gonna wanna teach like right away on your first day of school is transitions. Transitions is also like, so anytime that your kids are moving within your classroom, maybe they're changing activities, maybe they're moving from the floor to their seats, maybe they are switching classes, maybe they are going to recess or coming in from recess. Transitions is when behaviors happen. So like, those years that you've just had like absolute chaos and I'm missing something from my backpack, someone stole something from me, he hit me while I was at my cubby. Those are your transitions. And so you want to have a system where you can just sit back in your rolly chair and your students are just running themselves through these transitions. So let's talk about how to make that happen. So some tips for getting like super seamless, calm, quick, quiet transitions is that you're going to want to move students through these transitions in chunks. You never want to send your whole class to go to their backpacks at once. You never want to send your whole class to go back to their seats at once. That's just like asking for trouble. So call them in groups. I see that the red table is ready. Red table, you guys may go to your backpacks. You're looking around the room, you're monitoring. Green table, I can see that you guys are ready. Green table, you guys may go to your backpacks. And you're pacing things out to make sure that there's not like an influx of students all at once. What you don't want is bottlenecking. You don't want congestion in those traffic areas. That's where behaviors are going to happen. I also believe, so I'm going to use this as like my disclaimer. Some people find that this is like too strict or they disagree with this method, but you are here because you want a classroom that will run itself. You've experienced student behaviors, you've experienced rough classroom management, and you want to fix those things, I recommend that during transitions, students are silent. And I enforce that and we practice that. And that is my clear expectation. If you disagree with that, then this might not be the channel for you. We are running like a tight ship around here. We've learned the hard way that letting students talk or letting students whisper or letting students, talk in table groups during transitions has not worked out well for us. So I recommend that we are silent during transitions. Use that with your discretion. Moving on. During transitions also, if you guys are lining up to go to recess, downtime is your enemy. You don't want a huge chunk of time during that transition. Idle time does the devil's tidings, or idle hands do the devil's tidings, whatever that saying is. It's true. If your kids are sitting there, they're going to find a way to entertain themselves. So that's why calling those students in chunks once you see that they're ready is going to be key in your transition. Let's talk about a huge important part of your day that's going to set up success for your entire school day. That's going to be your morning arrival. Now, whether you have 5 minutes to get your kids in the door and lessons going, or you have 30 minutes like I've had in previous years, you're going to want to set up a very specific, solid, consistent routine. I've used this one for years. Literally 13 years. I learned it in student teaching. I implemented it in my own classroom, and it has worked so well for me over the years. Whatever you wind up doing for your morning routine, you need to make sure that you anchor your steps, that you have an expectation for student voice levels, that you have something where students can look to refer to, whether it's a morning slide or a morning message on Anchor chart, whatever it is. Have an expectation for what materials your students need to grab to prepare for their day, or what students need to do to prepare for their day. Are they sharpening pencils? Are they getting their red folders out? Are they working on their warm-up? Are they gathering everything out of their book boxes? Are they emptying out their backpacks? What are your expectations to prepare for the day? And then what do they do once they're ready? So my students always work on a must-do and a can-do. Your students could have morning work, they could read their library book, they could work with STEM bins, they could do their fact fluency, they could, watch announcements. They need to have some task that once they're ready, they start working on that task independently. This is also a great time for students to work on student jobs. So if you have some jobs that help your classroom run, whether it's preparing materials for the day, or sorting papers for you, or sharpening pencils, or organizing your classroom library, or tidying up your math manipulatives, whatever it is, this is a great time for student jobs. I also think it's great to have a visual timer somewhere of how much time your students have left in their morning routine. Like I said, my kids had 30 minutes in the mornings where kids could just trickle in throughout that 30 minutes. It was amazing. If you have that opportunity, I think it is the best thing for elementary students. But I will say, out of the dozens of teachers that I've coached one-on-one or in their classrooms with classroom management, the number one thing they say when it comes to morning routines is, I cannot let my students talk. I tried that and it did not work for me. So if you are wanting a really calm, systematic morning routine, again, I recommend silence. Letting them talk at their table groups or letting them talk to their partners is not going to work. Letting them get up and move around the room and be up out of their seats is not going to work. If you struggle with classroom management or you have tough groups, there is no gray zone. It's got to be black or it's got to be white. Kids are either up out of their seats being crazy or they're silent. There is no in between. So you've got to go with the one that's going to give you that calmness in your classroom. We're in our seats and we're silent. Now, if you want to know exactly how I do all of these routines, I have an example breakdown on my website. I also have questions that are designed to help you come up with your own routines. It's questions to ask yourself to figure out, what's going to work best for you, your classroom, your kids, your school, whatever it is. But then there's also an example breakdown of exactly how I did it for it's a 14-page document of exactly what I did. It's too much to go through on here. Another routine that you're going to want to teach on the first day of school is your pack-up routine. We all know that dismissal, pack-up, is when classroom management falls apart. That's the dumpster fire, that's the screaming, that's the chaos. You don't want to lose kids at dismissal. We all know how important it is to have a great pack-up routine. So let's talk about a great pack-up routine. Another one that I teach on the first day of school, I anchor it just like this. I've had pretty much the same pack-up routine for 13 years. I learned it in my student teaching and it has worked so well for me. So your rules of thumb, you're going to want to have an anchor chart. You're going to want to call your students in chunks. You're going to want to probably have them silent, and you're going to want to have just the right amount of time. Too much time, devil's tidings. I hope I'm saying that right. Not enough time, you're rushing through and it's causing chaos. So my students come in, we switch classes at the very end of the day. So my students come in, they're silent, they sit at their seats. I look for a visual signal. So I want to see that everyone's got their planners out, they're ready to get stamped or whatever it is, some kind of visual signal. Maybe they have, a stack of their stuff that's going to go home and a stack of their stuff that stays at school. Maybe they have their desk cleared off. Maybe they have everything taken out of their desk on top, ready to go into their cubby, whatever it is. I look for some type of like visual signal. Then once I see that my students are ready, I start calling them in chunks. Purple table, you guys look great. You guys may go to your backpacks. I wait for them. I make sure that they're silent. I'm watching. I'm listening. They see that I'm watching and I'm listening. Once most of my purple table has got that taken care of, then I look for another group. Yellow table, you guys are ready. I'm still infusing that calmness, like myself. I'm modeling calmness myself. It's also key here, like with any of your transitions, especially whenever you're calling students in chunks like that you do not move on until those students are ready. So if you told them that you want to see 100% of desks cleared off, you do not move on until you see 100% of desks cleared off. It tells them that you don't really mean what you say if you don't wait for all of those students. So that is one thing that whenever you're calling those students in chunks, yeah, you bet I'm sitting there and I'm watching. Red table, I'm still waiting on one person over there. Blue table, I see 100%. You guys may go to your book boxes. Nice. Now I see that everyone has 100% over at the red table. So that's just like an easy way to enforce every single step in your pack up routine. I personally love to have on ASMR videos like, the baby animal mukbang or sand cutting or hamster mazes or Lego cooking, backyard roller coasters, so that my students are kind of like engaged in something during pack up. Because like I said, if you have too much time and your students are just chilling, they're going to find a way to entertain themselves. So put on a nice little video, marble races, whatever it is, and let students just like chill out, down regulate from the day, get their lives together while other tables are packing up. This is also a great time for student jobs. My kids are turning off my lamps. My kids are feeding my turtle. My kids are stacking my chairs. My classroom custodian is making sure that our classroom is clean. My supplies manager is making sure that our table caddies look correct. My attendance clerk is setting out absence papers for any students that were absent. Great time for student jobs. And also one of our priorities is making sure that classroom is put back together. It's clean. Like, this is our classroom. We share this space. I don't care if you didn't drop that napkin. I guarantee someone has picked up after you before. We are all responsible for keeping our classroom clean. However, I am sitting back in my rolly chair facilitating how these students are doing these things. So my priorities are that our classroom is clean, my students are silent, we all have everything that we need to go home, everyone is calm before I send them out the door, I'm not losing any of my students because everything was chaotic, we're not getting into fistfights or pushing each other before we get out the door. Like, it's just a very calm, emotionally regulating process. Okay, and then let's talk about like if you are a teacher who is departmentalized and you have like multiple classes per day, or anytime that your students are like starting class or switching class. So even like, my primary teachers, anytime that your students are like coming into class, how they start their work, how they enter class, whether it's from recess or specials or lunch or whatever it is, this is important too. So there are 3 things that I always make sure are like my priorities, or 3 main parts to our starting class routine. And that is a teach like a champion strategy called threshold, which is basically where you just greet your students at the door, but doing it in like a certain way. Another goal is making sure that students are prepared for class. And then the third one is another teach like a champion strategy called a do now. It's more or less like a warm up. So I've seen this implemented with kindergartners all the way up to high school. So with threshold, my students greet me at the door. I'm standing like in the doorway so that I can monitor inside of my classroom, as well as like my line of students waiting to greet me. We talk about like a proper greeting. I can talk about that later in another video. I also have it broken down on my website for you guys, but we greet each other. That's their chance to talk to me or ask me any questions or just check in with me. It shows them that like it sets the tone for your classroom. We talk about like making eye contact. We talk about body language. We talk about facing each other. We talk about like our tone of voice. We talk about things to say to each other. We talk about like a proper handshake. It just shows them that like I mean business, they mean business. This is a warm, supportive place. It gives them a chance to kind of like get their lives together before they come into my classroom, because we're not just coming into my classroom, however. That's also their chance to like go get their materials for class, make sure they have their device, check out their earbuds, make sure they have like sharpened pencils, whatever it is. It gives them time to get prepared for class. And then my do now, our warm up, is always up on my slides whenever my students come into class. It has what they're expected to work on. The do now, it's a specific type of warm up where it's independent work. It's reviewing something that the students have like previously learned, and it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. So I also use like a must do, can do format. So once my students complete the must do, then I give them some options of can do things that they can work on. Again, this is a routine that is silent. because it's a chance for us to be calm. I also have a visual timer. That's another student job that I have. Once that student gets settled, they go up, they set the timer for us, and it lets kids know how long they have to complete the must do. And then during this time, you want to make sure that you are monitoring and that you are making yourself available. If your students see that you're like shuffling through papers or, on the phone or talking to your teammate at the door, they're going to start cutting up. So you got to make sure that they see that you are monitoring. Another key transition that's going to be super make or break for your classroom is ending class. So if you rotate subjects, you want to make sure that you have like a dedicated 5-minute chunk of time to switch classes. Like our switching class pack up time starts at 10:35 or whatever it is. My goals for this is that I always want to make sure that we put all of our materials back where they're supposed to go and that my room is put back together, tidied up. The years that I've had 2-3 classes, we share a cubby with each class, and each cubby has a book box. So one book box would be for my homeroom, and the other book box would be for my switching class. Those materials don't leave my classroom, and so they would keep those materials in their book box. So with them would go their Chromebook, their planner, their library books, their unfinished work and homework folder. Those things they would take with them from class to class. But in my class lived their math notebook, their math folder, their science notebook. Those things stayed in my classroom and did not leave. Over time, I learned the hard way that if you let your kids take those things with them, they will get lost. So during my switching routines, I always make sure that we have dedicated time. We're all at our seats. When I see that you have, I always say 2 nice tidy stacks of your take with you stuff and your goes in your cubby stuff, I'll know that you're ready to go to your book box and start packing up. And so again, blue table, I see that 100% of you guys are ready. You guys may go to your book boxes. They're packing up, they're silent, putting their things away. They come back to their seats. Yellow table, I see that you guys are ready. You guys may go to your book boxes. Same thing. I'm not rushing through. My students are silent. I might have on an ASMR video. My room is getting nice and tidy. Students are cleaning up their space, doing any student jobs they might need to do. And again, it's a very calm process. Now, what about those of you who are self-contained or you teach multiple subjects? I remember when I was a new teacher, I was like, how do I switch from math to science? Do I say okay, now it's time for math? I didn't know how to get started. That's why I recommend having a visual timer up on the board, kind of just embeds a natural transition for you. Always have your schedule posted, in large student-friendly print. I recommend having if they need to switch out their notebooks or go get their math workbooks or go get their book bins, that they have materials that are accessible, and that's part of your transition. And then again, we're transitioning because I'm looking for those visual signals that students are giving me that they're ready. I know you're ready when you are in Longhorn position and you have your library books. I know you're ready when you're with your math partner and both of your hands are up. Or I know you're ready to start when you're at your seat with nothing but a pencil on your desk. Those are ways that you can switch subjects, and it's natural and it's calm and it's efficient. And then one of our last important transitions is moving from your mini lesson or your carpet area back to your seats or vice versa. So just like all the other ones, you're going to want to teach the expectation very explicitly in steps and then practice it. You want to give some type of visual cue that they're ready. Say, for example, you're calling students to come from their desks to the floor. You're going to want to say when you come to the floor, I want to see your notebook in your hands and your eyes on the screen. You call that red table to come sit at the floor, verbally praise the students that you see with their eyes on the screen and their notebooks in their hands. Or if you're sending them from the floor back to their seats, when I call you, I want you to put your yellow notebook away and get out your math workbook. First row, go back to your seats, put away your yellow notebook, get out your math workbook. You're slow, you're watching them, you're not rushing to the next group, you're making sure that students are following that expectation that you just gave. They're calm, they're quick, they're silent, because that's what you told them to do. Again, if you want to see exactly how I do this myself, I have my example breakdown on my website, as well as questions to ask yourself for setting up your own routines that are going to work for you and your kids. Okay, another routine that I teach on the first day of school that I think is so important and I don't see very often, it's a kind of a common mistake, a lot of teachers don't explicitly teach this, is your attention getter. Your students can get as out of control as possible, but if you have a really super solid attention getter, you have not lost control yet. Now, you guys know that I think the attention getter that is superior is going to be the countdown. I don't love call and responses. I don't love dings or bells because they cut students off right away. Whenever you're in a professional development or something and they're asking you to engage with somebody at your table and then they make you wrap up, stop your conversation right there in the middle. It's frustrating. Kids are gonna finish what they're saying, and they're either gonna finish when you give them time or they're gonna finish once you start talking. So that's why I think giving a countdown lets kids naturally wrap up that conversation. And you can give your directives while you're counting down. It can sound something like this. You're wrapping up your conversations in 5. Your eyes are on me in 4. Our voices are off in 3. Voices are off in 2. Our voices are off in 1. You can slow down, you can speed up, you can get firmer, you can get quieter. I just think that the countdown is superior. So on the first day of school, we teach and practice this attention getter. And it goes something like this. Okay, when I start counting down, I want you to listen to the directions that I'm giving. When you hear my voice, you need to start wrapping up your conversation and be 100% ready by the time I get to 0. I want your eyes on me, I want you silent, and I want you ready to listen to directions. I'll give them a fun topic to talk about. Something like, talk about something a grown-up in your house does that's really cringy. Go. I let them talk at their table groups, give them, a while to get a little noisy and rowdy, and then we practice. Okay, I want your voices off in 5. Your eyes are on me in 3, 2, 1. I stop. I don't move on. You're like calm and controlled in the situation. So you are monitoring. You're letting them see that you are dramatically pausing to make sure that you have 100% of your students meeting your expectation. Great. We did a great job. Everyone was silent by the time I got to 0, but I do see two people who don't have their eyes on me. I'm waiting on 2. I'm waiting on 1. All right, let's try it again. This time I want you guys to talk about, and you keep practicing until you get 100% meeting your expectations. Yes, it is key that you have 100%. Otherwise, you're telling them that you don't really mean what you say. Okay, so we talked a little bit about getting kids to come to the floor and go back to their seats. Let's talk about our routine for morning meeting, like the actual morning meeting, not just transitioning to and from morning meeting. I'll do more episodes on morning meeting like later in the summer whenever we're talking about like community and stuff. But right now for the routine of morning meeting, let's break down some of the basics. This is when I usually teach on the first or second day of school. I always have an anchor chart of my expectations and we go through it together. If you're doing specifically morning meeting or restorative circles or whatever like community building time that your school does where you guys sit on the floor, it is crucial that you have some type of expectation for how they come to the floor. I have my students fill in, what is that? Counterclockwise. So there's a little spot on the floor, like one of those little sit spots where Miss Phillips sits. When I call that red table down, or when I call those January, February birthdays down, they know that they sit one at a time, filling in counterclockwise around our circle. And I'm sure enough, I'm sitting there and I'm monitoring. And if I see people that are like lingering, trying to sit by their friends, that's not the point of morning meeting. We want students to sit next to different people. We want students to sit next to not their best friends because we don't want these like little insular pockets of kids, because the whole point of morning meeting is that we're building community. So we want to sit next to people that necessarily aren't our best friends. And we talk about why it's important to sit next to different people every day. Another one of my expectations is that everyone is in the circle. We're always going to have like a kid or two who is kind of like leaned out, trying to like kind of like pinch themselves out of the circle. I want to see that everybody is like in the circle. I can see all of their faces. We're all here together. My campus follows Teach Like a Champion strategies, and one of the words that we use is track the speaker. And so that just means that you're following whoever the speaker is with your eyes. So we always track and listen to whoever's speaking. Another one of our expectations for morning meeting is that we raise our hand to speak, and our hand is down while others are speaking. We talk about how it's like disrespectful to have your hand up while someone else is talking because it shows that you're not really listening to what they're saying. Instead, you're ready to say what you want to say. I use the words have a safe, calm, and engaged body because in 5th grade, a lot of times that can look like slumped over. We can be leaned back. We can have our heads down, and that shows that you're not really engaged. You're not really with us. So we sit up. I don't care if they cross their legs or not, but I want to see that they're sitting up, they're engaged, they're with us. I'll talk about greetings whenever we talk again about morning meeting later in the series. Our greeting is obviously an important part of morning routine, so we always start with like how to do a proper greeting. We talk about making eye contact and what a friendly tone sounds like. In morning meeting, we use like a special talking piece. Mine was like a grizzly bear claw, and the person with the talking piece is the one who was talking, and then we were like respectfully pass it, and that's a way to get students to like respect the process of listening to one another. And then I also always put on our morning meeting chart to have an open heart and mind, just to like encourage others to, build tolerance and respect and just build like a strong classroom community. Another important routine that I think is super important for your classroom management is when your students are on the floor for your mini lesson or on the floor for your carpet time or whatever it is. So not morning meeting, but like your instructional time on the floor. Even though I teach 5th grade, I still prefer, like if I'm doing math or language arts, to have my students come to the floor. I just feel like it gives you like better, like your fingers on the pulse of your classroom, and like you can monitor your students better. Obviously, you need to keep those chunks of time on the floor like pretty small, so we're not doing like 30-minute on the floor lessons. So again, this is another one that I teach. I put this anchor chart like underneath my board where students can see it, like in the area where they're sitting, to reinforce our expectations. I also teach this to them. We practice it, and then I consistently enforce it, which we will talk about in our next episode. We'll talk about like how to effectively implement all of these routines. But my expectations are that students are prepared with their material. So if I'm doing a math lesson, they have their math notebooks and a pencil. I tell them every day like what I want them to have. Today you guys need just a pencil. Today you guys don't need anything. Blue notebook and a red pen, whatever it is. So they're always prepared with their materials. Again, that gives me like that visual signal to look for when I call them to the floor. Another time that you do not want your kids to just sit wherever. If they sit wherever, why are they doing that? Because they want to sit next to their friend. Why do they want to sit next to their friend? Because they're going to cut up. They're not there to cut up. They're there to learn. They'll have time to cut up at recess, at lunch, whenever. Like when you have them on the floor, that's their time to give you their full undivided attention and participation. Another thing that I hear teachers commonly say that I have coached is I can't let them sit. I can't let them choose their seats. I can't let them sit wherever. They cannot handle it. You're right. We've learned the hard way. Have them come sit on the floor in a certain way. Depending on how much space you have, that's kind of going to like dictate how your seats are going to be. Usually I do 5 rows of 5. So I have my students fill in boop, 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 boop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so whenever I call my students, we fill in the first 5 seats. If someone goes to the second row when there's only 4 seats in the first row, nope, the first row is supposed to have 5 seats, move to the first row. So they fill in the next open seat and then they start a new row. If you have that tough group, you're going to want to watch for like that lingering, them trying to wait for their friend to come sit before they sit down. That's why you are watching and you're calling in chunks so that you can monitor, are they sitting the way that I've taught them to sit? If you have certain students that need to sit by you, make them come sit by you. Like this is your time. Like do not be scared. This is your time to have them fully have their attention on you and your instruction. Like you are the one who needs to be in control right now. My 5th graders need a safe, calm, and engaged body. We're not turned around. We're not laying down. We're not facing our buddy. Our heads aren't down. I know that they're ready whenever they, I see like the younger grades have like star position or whatever expectation they have, and they have it like anchored underneath their whiteboard. I think that's great if you need that. So some expectation for how they should look. Again, that's like a visual signal that you can be checking for. I know 100% of my students are ready whenever they're in longhorn position or whatever it is. My visual signal in 5th grade was that their notebook was on the floor with their pencil on top. And we talk about like visual signals and like why I have that. So it's like their way of showing me that they're ready for our math lesson. And then of course my expectation for my lesson is that they are silent, they're participating, and that their eyes are on the speaker. Okay, so those are like our heavy hitting routines that you're going to want to like really nail down and let those be like the foundation of your classroom. Because remember, there is no quick fix. Having a super solid, structured classroom with routines, procedures, the way you do things in your classroom, that's what's going to give you great classroom management. And you've got to find what works for you. So if you're like, oh my God, I need all the resources, I don't know where to start, I have that no details left behind. It's like a 14-page document that's going to ask you all kinds of questions to get you to think about how you want this to look in your classroom. Or the example breakdown, that's exactly how I do it in my classroom if you need like a baseline for where to start. And I will link both of those in the description for you guys. The next episode is also going to make it to where, that honeymoon phase that happens at the beginning of the year, things are great for the first few weeks and then they start falling apart. It's why October is so notorious with classroom management, because that's when things really fall apart and have teachers questioning, like, can I do this the rest of the year? Should I quit? Like, what have I gotten myself into? We are going to be on the other side of the room, sitting back in our rolly chair while our classroom runs itself come October. And that is because we are going to teach our routines, we're going to practice our routines, and we're going to consistently enforce our routines to where they are just second nature by October. So like I said, the next episode is going to be so powerful, so important, laid out for you. So stay tuned, besties.